to do.
Hey, what is up YouTube? This is Infernity, back again for another video, and this time we're going to be doing a deck profile on what has so far been my most popular deck that I have actually posted on here, that being Infernity. I honestly didn't expect Infernity to be quite as popular as they did, but so far they're my strongest video, going with about 6,000 views, so I figured, hey, new format, I made some changes to it, let's see what the new Infernities do. Now, these Infernities are, to me, a bit more consistent than they used to be. They still kind of lack in the power that they once did, obviously, but, you know, it's still a strong deck. It still does its job, but enough of my ramblings. You just want to see the deck profile. Let's go ahead and get to that, shall we? Alrighty, so kicking this off, since this is an Infernity deck, we need to have our one copy of the Infernity Archfiend. This is the first of 3 cards within the Infernity archetype that has actually been put to 1, and for good reason. The way that the Infernity cards work is that they get their effects out by you having no cards in your hand, and Archfiend is no exception. The way that he works is that when you draw into this card, if you have no other cards in your hand you can reveal this card and then special summon it from your hand. And then when this card is special summoned, if you have no cards in your hand, you can add 1 Infernity card from your deck to your hand. This is especially helpful because it's an Infernity card you're adding, so it could be a monster, spell, trap, anything that you need. He's basically the Swiss Army knife of this deck. Just everything he can do is truly what makes him amazing. And there's really nothing more satisfying than top decking this card mid-game with no hand. It's just, it's a thing of beauty, really. Next up, we have 3 copies of Infernity Necromancer. This guy's also pretty good. When he's normal summoned, he switches to defense mode immediately. And if you have no cards in your hand, then once per turn, you can special summon 1 Infernity monster from your graveyard, except another Necromancer. So, this is incredibly useful, be it to get back our good buddy Archfiend down there, or and get off his search effect, or to grab the 1 copy of Infernity Avenger. This guy has a pretty decent effect, not really used that often, but when a monster you control is destroyed, except for Avenger, by an opponent's card, by battle, and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon him from the graveyard, and then he gains the level, his level becomes that of the destroyed monster. So say if a Necromancer is destroyed and goes to the graveyard, and he's in there, then you can special summon him as a level 3 monster. It's just kind of good for fending off your opponent. You're really not going to be using that too much. The main thing that Avenger's good for is being a tuner monster, and specifically a level 1 tuner. So the main thing you're going to want is essentially to be able to get these 3 out all at once, because then you can go for any 8-star synchro. And since he's a dark tuner, that also lets you go into some other synchro monsters that you normally wouldn't be able to. You can also have Avenger and Necromancer go into a 4-star synchro and then overlay or something, I don't know. The plays are truly endless with this deck. It's what makes it so fun. And then we also have, to round off the Infernity monster lineup, 1 copy of Infernity Mirage. Now, what Mirage does is that, unfortunately, he can't be special summoned from the graveyard, but you'll find out why in just a second. If you have no cards in your hand, you contribute this card to special summon 2 Infernity monsters from your graveyard. Do you see why this guy cannot be brought back from the graveyard now? He'd be busted as hell if he could. He's 2 monster reborns in 1. The loop you could do with him and Necromancer would be stupid. But even without that, he's still a really good card, because, again, he special summons, so guess who that gets back? Get the search off, also get Necromancer. Necromancer can bring back something like Avenger. You see where this goes? It's all ultimately going to you getting the Archfiend, Necromancer, and Avenger out on the field, so you can do whatever you want with them. But, like I said, that's actually it for the Infernity monster lineup. There's usually not too much to do with the Infernity monsters. That's usually all you'll run. At most, you may mess around with, like, the number of Mirages or Necromancers, but I found that 3 Necromancer and 1 Mirage tends to work out pretty well. So, for the other monsters, we have 1 copy of Archfiend Eris. I truthfully wasn't running this one for a while, just because there's only 1 Archfiend, so it seemed kind of pointless. For those of you who don't know, when Archfiend Eris is sent to the graveyard by a card effect or being destroyed by battle, You can add one Archfiend card from your deck to your hand, except for Archfiend Eris, and you can only use that once per turn. Normally it's intended to work with the Archfiend archetype, but because of loopholes, Infernity Archfiend counts. So this card can be used to search out Archfiend, and it helps every once in a while, but not too often. Usually you can pull it out from the deck or the graveyard or something. That's why there's only one. It's really a situational, just depends card. Next up, we run the one copy of Armageddon Knight, just to send a dark monster to the graveyard. It can really be anything. It can be the Avenger, Stygian Street Patrol, which we'll get to later. Just really whatever you need to get into the graveyard. It's usually going to be those two cards, but still really helpful. For the same purpose, we also run two Dark Greffers. I prefer Dark Greffer because, one, it's stronger. It has 1700 attack instead of 1400, so it's just a little bit better. But on top of that, his Foolish Burial effect for Dark Monsters works by you discarding a Dark Monster first. Since the purpose of this deck is to not have a hand, if you have a lot of monsters in your hand, you will brick hard with this deck. So Dark Greffer just kind of helps cancel that out. It's not a huge monster lineup, but it does still happen. So just for instance like that, Dark Greffer is extremely helpful. Also run two copies of Summoner Monk. Summoner Monk's pretty useful for this. We do run a decent amount of spells, so his effect is pretty good. You just drop a spell and then special summon a level 4 monster from your deck. You can use it to just go straight for Archfiend, get off his special summon effect, assuming that spell you dropped was the last one. You can use it to get either Armageddon Knight or Dark Greffer to help put things in your graveyard, or if it's Greffer, empty your hand further. It's just overall a really good card. Helpful for getting what you need out of the deck. You can also, fun fact, use it to grab one of the 3 Stygian Street Patrols that I mentioned earlier. This card is actually one of the key pieces of the deck for a similar reason that Dark Greffer is, in that it helps keep cards out of your hand, or this helps you empty your hand of monsters faster. His first effect lets you burn if he destroys a monster, but with only 1600 attack, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to do that. It can happen, so it's just fun to have that. The main thing that he can do is that you can banish him from your graveyard to special summon a Fiend-type monster with 2000 or less attack from your hand. Well, guess what? That's everyone in the Infernity archetype, so every card in this deck, with the exception of Armageddon Knight, Dark Greffer, and Summoner Monk, Stygian Street Patrol can special summon any of them, so that helps out tremendously. And I tried running him at 2 before, but I'm trying 3 now, and it helps a lot with the consistency. Plus, again, you can always just use him for discard fodder for Dark Greffer effects, so it does actually help out a lot to have him at 3 instead of 2. Some people like to run Dinotherium in Infernities. I personally don't like it, just because if you don't use it turn 1, it bricks hard. For those who don't know, Dinotherium just special summons itself, but then your opponent can Monster Reborn, so it's really only useful turn 1. So I don't really care for it as much, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. That's actually it for my monster lineup. It's only 15 monsters. The idea of Infernity is you want to try and keep your monster count as low as possible. But of course there's still some key things you gotta run, so what are you gonna do? Next up we have the spell lineup, and just a heads up, the deck's not 100% done. I'm kind of proxying a few things here, so the spell count's going to be a little lower than it should be, but just go with me on this one. Starting off, we have the second of our limited cards, Infernity Launcher. This is, of the 3 Infernity cards that are limited, is the one that will probably never come any higher. And honestly, it really shouldn't. It's busted as hell. So it has 2 effects. The first one is that you can send 1 Infernity monster from your hand to your graveyard once per turn. Since it's a continuous spell, you can do it every turn until you have none in your hand. Shouldn't take too long if you're doing it right, but the main effect of it is that while you have no cards in your hand, you can send this card from the field to the graveyard to select up to 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard and special summon them. It's basically the same thing that Mirage does, but this is a little bit more versatile just because it can get up to 2, and Mirage has to be 2. So you can use this to only get back 1 monster if, you only have 1 for some reason, but 9 times out of 10 that's not going to be too big of an issue. That's all I gotta say on that. Run 1 copy of Instant Fusion because I do have Instant Fusion targets in the extra deck. this was originally supposed to be for grabbing Elder God Nodin. For some reason, we don't get him in World Superstars. No, instead we get the ever-loving Star Seraph. Stupid freaking cards. I hate the damn things. But that's, again, neither here nor there. It's a rant for another day. So it just kind of helps fill in the gaps with levels if you happen to need it. You know, missing your one Archfiend or you don't have level 3 or something. Just helps out with that. I also have a 1-for-1, since there are 2 level 1s in the deck, being Infernity Avenger and Infernity Mirage. And with its cost of sending a monster from your hand to the graveyard, it again helps keep your hand nice and empty. And then it can also be used to special summon from the hand or deck, so it's pretty useful. It's very rarely going to be a brick card unless you just don't have a discard. But in that case, just set it and hope your opponent's stupid enough to blind MST it and waste some of their resources. Also have 1 Rhoda, because you have Armageddon 9 Dark Grepher, and sometimes you need to grab them. And if you don't, then again, blind MST bait. 1 Dark Hole, because Raigeki is too expensive for my blood. 1 Soul Charge, because who doesn't love Mass Monster Reborns? I know I do. 1 Foolish Burial, because if I haven't beaten into your heads enough yet that you want to get some monsters in the graveyard like Street Patrol and Avenger, this will do it. Get them in the graveyard, damn it. 1 Book of Moon, because we need the Swiss Army Knife back row card, and this is it. And because this is somewhat of a back row heavy format, 2 MSTs. As this deck shows, back row is becoming a thing again. Albeit Infernities are not becoming a thing again. Back row still is. So 2 MSTs just to kind of take care of that. Not much more I can say on that one, really. Again, this is less than what it's supposed to be in terms of spell lineup, but I'll explain that in a second. Starting off our trap lineup, we have the final card in our trifecta of limited Infernity cards, Infernity Barrier. Truthfully, this is not what it used to be. I could honestly see this going up to 2 or 3 and it not making a damn difference. The reason for that is the way that it works is when your opponent activates a spell trap or monster effect while you have no cards in your hand and a face-up attack position Infernity monster, you can negate the activation and control it. And destroy it. Now, I know this sounds hilariously broken, but I'd like to point something out to you guys real quick. Let's look at our Infernity monster lineup again, shall we? We have Necromancer, Archfiend, Mirage, and Avenger. I'd like to point something out to you between these guys. One of them is different from the other. That one is Archfiend. Why is he different? Because he is the only one who doesn't have 0 attack points. What did Barrier say again? A face-up attack position Infernity monster. The only one of them that you would ever have in attack mode for any reason is Archfiend. And he's not usually going to be staying around for very long with how the deck works now. He's usually going to be Synchro or Xyz fodder. So, because of that, Barrier is no longer at the strength that it once was. I'm not saying it's a bad card. It's just less. I mean, you could use Infernity Doom Dragon, I guess, but honestly, with all the other 8-star synchros you'll have, Doom Dragon is probably going to be your worst choice. Not that he's a bad one, but, you know, just less. So, even if Barrier did go up, I probably would still only run it at 1, just because I've played it several times and never gotten a chance to use it. It's just good to have just in case. Next up, we run the 2 Infernity breaks. Once upon a time, I used to run this at 3, but then it kind of started to brick a bit. This was also back when Archfiend was at 3, so it made more sense then. As with every Infernity card ever, it can only be activated when you have no cards in your hand, and you can banish 1 Infernity card from your graveyard to destroy 1 card on the field. Just gets rid of some of that extra annoying stuff. It can be used for some extra MSTs if you need it, you never know. It's just a decent card to have. Okay, now, earlier on I said that my spell lineup was a little lacking. I've mentioned this a couple times already. Here's why. I run 3 copies of the Legacy of Yatagarasu, aka not Upstart Goblin. These 3 are supposed to be Upstart Goblins, so I should have 3 more and 3 more spells and 3 less traps than the deck currently does. But Upstart Goblin's a little pricey for me. Again, I'm kind of cheap with this game. I'm just a casual player. So until that time, I'm just teching it in as Legacy of Yatagarasu. it does the same thing. It's just not a spell card. Just added consistency. Truthfully, if pretending these are Upstart Goblins, I hate how a lot of decks run Upstart Goblin. Just because, to me, it's really only a card that should be run if you can OTK and then some. Not decks that can hit that 8,000, but decks that can hit 8,000 without even trying. Decks that can go above and beyond and do like 10,000 or game twice. Those are the decks that run Upstart Goblin, because to them, the extra 1,000 life points are insignificant. So mostly meta decks and stuff like that, and this deck can do it too. So for that reason, I feel like it's safe to run Upstarts, but since I'm not doing that, they're Legacy of Yatagarasus. Should be Upstarts, but again, too rich for my blood. Now for some of our 1-0s, we have 1 Compulse, 1 Bottomless, 1 Torrential, and 1 Solemn Warning. Why? You shouldn't really have to ask why. Those are pretty self-explanatory. They're almost in every damn deck. Next up, I have 2 Mirror Force, because it is high effing hilarious to have an opponent run into a Mirror Force. Plus, with what I have planned later on with this deck, these will be essential. Now, time for me to start showing where the deck has really changed. Because I'm sure a lot of you who saw my previous deck profile are wondering, where's Wonder Balloons? Well, it wasn't really working, first of all, but secondly, thanks to Premium Gold Return of the Bling, I found some fun new things. One of which, Crush Card Virus. Oh, this card right here has been an absolute joy. For those of you who do not know how Crush Card Virus works thanks to its eroded effect, you tribute 1 dark monster with 1,000 or less attack, and then your opponent will no longer take damage for the remainder of the turn. Whoop-de-frickin' do. Then, you look at your opponent's hand and all monsters they control. Then, if any of them have 1,500 or more attack, destroy them. Then, your opponent can destroy up to 3 monsters with 1,500 or more attack in their deck. Now, that last part with the deck destruction is optional, so that's usually going to happen when your opponent can plus off of it. Otherwise, you know, oh well. But the main thing about that is the number of targets that this card has is hysterical. We have the 3 Necromancers, the Mirage, the Avenger, the 2 Summoner Monks, and Archfiend Eris. That's 8 targets out of a 42 card deck. That's right, this is 42 cards, so I was going to mention that later, but whatever. Another fun fact about this. You only need to tribute a dark monster with 1,000 less attack. It does not need to be face up. That means you can tribute a set Avenger, or Summoner Monk, or whatever. You can just tribute that, which really adds the surprise value because your opponent will not see that coming. And it's good for just getting rid of some last minute really big monsters. It's helped me out tremendously, especially in some instances where I've been able to get rid of a BLS, which was just very gratifying. But that's not the only card I've gotten thanks to Return of the Bling. The second one, and that has recently proven its worth to me, is Ring of Destruction. I didn't really think this card was that great after its eroded effect, but I needed some filler space in the deck, so I tried it out. Its new eroded effect isn't too different from its original. What it does is that during your opponent's turn, you target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, whose attack is less than or equal to your opponent's life points. That face-up monster is destroyed, and if it is destroyed successfully, you take damage to that monster's original attack, then your opponent will take that same damage. So it's kind of a situational card. You may not always want to do it, but in the right situation, this card can really, really work. It's strongest when you're ahead of your opponent in terms of life points. But again, it's still really good card. It's proved itself for me on a couple of occasions already, so it's definitely earned its place in my deck. It's not as weak as I thought the errata had made it. I'm also running 1 Black Horn of Heaven, or as it should be called, 1 Vanity's Emptiness. Truthfully, I hated Vanity's Emptiness before. I thought it was just the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life. It was too broken. It was just excessive. Then April hit, and Konami finally thought the same way I did and put it to 1. Now I don't care as much. Now, fine. You can have your Vanity's Emptiness. I only have to get rid of it once. I don't have to get rid of 3 of them. So, that's what Black Horn of Heaven's supposed to be. I just haven't gotten my hands on any Vanities yet. I'm working on that for right now. Probably, hopefully get them at the same time as the Upstart Goblins, but I'll probably get the Vanities first. But yeah, that's that. And normally that would be the end, but as I mentioned earlier, this is not a 40 card deck, and this would be the 40th card. It's 42 card deck, something I normally don't do, but in this case, I just kind of needed to squeeze these guys in. 2 copies of Ceasefire. Now, I'm sure this is kind of an odd one, but hear me out. The reason I put Ceasefire in here is because this deck does not have the consistency it once did. This deck could normally just crap out damage like no one's business, and not even give 2 thoughts onto how many resources it was likely blowing out of its ass. Now it can't do that as well. It can still do it, but it's pretty much like a one-time thing. That's mostly because Archfiend's at 1, which, you know, fair enough. But so the reason that I do this is because even though Archfiend is still at 1, that does not kill the deck's ability to swarm. And that's why I have Ceasefire. The way that it works is that it flips all face-down defense and monsters face up, and the flip effects don't activate. And then your opponent will take damage for take 500 damage for each effect monster currently on the field. Well, if this deck does its job correctly, you should be able to fill all 5 slots in 1 turn easily. So that means Ceasefire will be able to go off at least 2,500 points of damage, and that can be a huge difference. That's more than a Gustav Max can burn off in 1 turn. Plus, if your opponent has any effect monsters on their field when you do that, that's just more damage. And with 2 of them, you're talking at least 5,000 damage. So, again, in a deck where it's just made to crap out damage, this card just helps a lot. I know it technically throws the consistency off by 2 cards, but since I'm also running 3 Upstart Goblins, technically, it just kind of knocks it down to a 39 card deck, so to speak. So, you know, it still does its job just fine. It still works. But yeah, I've been having fun with it so far. That's it for the main deck. Now on to the extra deck, which first off we have 1 Cherubin the Fire Knight, aka level 3 instant fusion target, and 1 Darkfire Dragon, aka level 4 instant fusion target. Basically all that do. No, not really anything more than that. I won 1 copy of Armory Arm. This card has actually been really funny. Just because sometimes you may only be able to go into a 4 with Necromancer and Avenger, but there are also some instances where it behooves you to do that. For instance, if you have a Stygian Surgeons out, which I also run 1 of. Now, here's how these guys work. Armory Arm can act as a union monster and equip to another face-up monster you control. It gains 1,000 attack, and then when it successfully destroys a monster, your opponent takes damage equal to the attack of the destroyed monster in the graveyard. Stygian Surgeons, on the other hand, can, when he destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, gains 800 attack and can then attack again. With these 2 combined, he is base 32, gets stronger every time he destroys a monster, and will burn every time he does that. Also, I'd like to point out that it doesn't say you can attack a monster again in a row. It says you can just attack once again in a row. Which means that if all goes well, by the time Stygian Surgeon's Rampage is done, he's attacked your opponent directly. And if your opponent brings out too many things, that's going to do a lot of damage. So Stygian Surgeons is one of those really fun cards I've just been having a ball with. I also run 1 copy of Armades, because, you know, who needs all that back row? I also run 2 copies of 100 Eyes Dragon. I'm probably going to knock him down to 1, if not take him out completely. And not that he's a bad card, but in my last Infernity deck profile, as I was so graciously explained to by some of the commenters, I did not really understand how the 100 Eyes loop worked. I had assumed it was, or at least my variant of it was to banish Necromancer, and then have use effect, get back Archfiend. Archfiend would search off a second Necromancer. I use Stygian Street Patrol, to special summon him, the Necromancer, and then Necromancer does his thing all over again. I just keep doing that until I'm satisfied or run out of Necromancers or Street Patrols. However, a lot of people were telling me that it was supposed to be with Mirage, but I was thinking, well, why would you do that? That means you have to tribute 100 Eyes. That seems stupid. But then they explained to me that after you banish Mirage to get its effect, you're actually then supposed to activate Escape from the Dark Dimension, which special summons a banished Dark Monster onto your field. And then you just use Mirage's effect there. So I misunderstood that. I did not realize there was more to it than that. However, as you can see, I'm not running Escape from the Dark Dimension. I tried it after it was explained to me, and I just didn't care for it. It just didn't help me at all, so 100 Eyes are probably not going to be in here too much longer, at least not at 2. I just need to find something to replace him with, which, again, I will find later. I run 2 copies of Void Ogre Dragon. He is staying at 2 for damn sure. This is a Shien with 3,000 attack and defense, so just once per turn, while you have no cards in your hand, if your opponent tries to activate a spell or trap card, you just get to say screw that noise and destroy it. And that is fun to do. It really makes your opponent have to try and play around it, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. So, there's that. Next up, I run 1 copy of Beel's Dragon, the Diabolic Dragon, because, I don't always like it when my things get destroyed by card effects or battles, so for that I have Beel's. And then our good old buddy Infernity Doom Dragon, who I mentioned in the turning and a half ago with Infernity Barrier. Now, again, of all of your 8-star synchros, he is the weak link, but that does not mean he's bad. What he does is that you can, if you have no cards in your hand, target 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and then your opponent will take damage equal to half of that monster's attack, but Doom Dragon cannot attack the turn you activate it. Unfortunately, this is really only useful on anything higher than 2,000 attack, because otherwise Doom Dragon could just attack it and get the same amount of damage off. But again, it's helpful for getting rid of anything bigger than 2,000 attack, and it does work as a barrier trigger, so there is that. It just really depends on what you want, but given how barrier works, I'd personally rather just go for the Void Ogre Dragons, but it really does just depend on what you want. He's a fun thing to go into if nothing else. Next up, I run 1 Levier the Sea Dragon, but probably not for too much longer. He hasn't really been pulling his weight like I had hoped, mostly because I'm not banishing too much stuff anymore. So he's probably going to end up becoming the second Lavolval chain that I run. I only run 1 right now, but it's because until recently he was stupid expensive. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm cheap. But yeah, he's really helpful for either getting more of your necessary monsters into the graveyard, or for putting Infernity's Archfiend on the top of your deck to draw next turn. Just know that you're going to have that free trigger, which is why the Lavolval chain is hilarious in this deck. And doing rank 4 plays is actually really easy. Next up, I run 1 Castel. I prefer Castel over 101, honestly, because 101 has to be an attack position, special summon monster. With Castel, it's just a card, so for me that's a face-up card, but still. It's just more dynamic to me. I understand that Castel can't prevent his own destruction, so there is that, but at the same time, I just prefer Castel. I feel like he's just a better card, but again, I'm not saying 101's bad. That's just my opinion. And finally, 1 Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. This guy is one of my new favorite Xyz monsters. He is so much fun. For those of you guys who don't know what he does, he's basically a Gaga Cowboy in attack mode. So you attach 2 materials and target 1 monster your opponent, 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. It gets its attack halved, and then Dark Rebellion gains the lost attack points onto his own. The fun part about it is that's not temporary. It's permanent. So if you have a Stardust on the field, you activate Dark Rebellion's effect, that Stardust is going to lose half of its attack, and then Dark Rebellion is going to gain that half permanently. So he'll just be big beefy forever, which is honestly really funny. But yeah, that's it for my extra deck too. I do have a side deck, not much of one, but I guess I'll just go over it for now. Can't hurt. It's just 2 copies of Deep Prison in case I'm facing Pendulums, or more specifically Cleese, or I just don't want Mass Destruction for some reason. And then 2 Light Imprisoning Mirrors, just in case I'm going up against like Satellar Knights or Light Sworns or something like that. Just because I only have 2 light monsters I ever go into, those being Armory Arm and Armades, and I very rarely sink 4 or 5, so it wouldn't really hurt me all that much. But yeah, that's actually it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think this is a good Infernity deck? Does it beat my last one? What would you guys run in an Infernity deck? Just let me know your thoughts down below. Of course, don't forget to also like and subscribe. Definitely subscribe, because as promised in the past, if you guys can help me get to 400 subscribers, I'll give you a hint as to the new segment I'll be running when I hit 500 subscribers. That all depends on you guys. I need your support to keep this going, so share this video with everyone you can find. Watch it thousands of times. Subscribe, whatever you gotta do. Just get this out there. Make sure people know about Hypergon. Until next time, peace.